Kremin. I'm a current senior here at U of M. I'm a political science major and I have a double minor in peace and social justice and Spanish. But I went to South Africa this past summer and I had an internship with the Parliamentary monitoring group. They're an NGO based out of Cape Town. Their main goal is to increase transparency and democracy. Because there's actually no official function or person position in the South African Parliament that is sort of a scribe. A secretary takes minutes of the meetings. So we're the people that go to the meetings, write reports, and then publish them for the public. They're accessed by, the MPs themselves when they don't go to their meetings, different government departments, as well as international organizations that have an interest in certain issues that are, working their way through Parliament. So most of my job was going to those meetings, sitting through 3-hour policy briefings and taking notes. It was kind of tedious, but I did actually end up learning a lot about South African politics. We also did work on good governance, which is the collaboration between civil society organizations and the government. So we were putting on a conference, right as I left, called People's Power, People's Parliament, which was going to be, more of an open discussion on how that can be improved. So I guess next we're supposed to sort of talk about how this internship impacted us. I did not necessarily get the professional experience I was hoping for. I went in with very different expectations of what my internship would be like versus sort of what actually ended up happening, because I did want to go to South Africa focusing on human rights and human rights policy. But there actually weren't a whole lot of meetings about that, which in and of itself is, I think an indication of what sort of emphasis the government places on those issues. So instead I got to sit through a lot of meetings on mining and science and technology, which, most of went over my head. But I did learn that a lot of the things that were being said had to be taken with a grain of salt. South Africa has a really large problem with corruption, along with government enforcement and follow-through. So, what MPs were saying was great, but you couldn't necessarily count on them or the government for working to improve the work that they were doing. But I think that sort of motivated me more to really take an interest in social justice issues. Just because living in Cape Town, you see a lot of differences among people. You see the really, really white foreigners who have their holiday homes on the beach, beautiful scenery. You see just a 15-minute drive down the highway, the townships where people have no electricity, no plumbing, the streets flood when it rains. So I think that contrast really illustrated to me that there's still a lot of problems that need to be worked on to solve. So after I graduate, I'm hoping to kind of do more sort of on-the-ground work. I'm applying to the Peace Corps at the moment, so crossing my fingers for that. But then I think it would be really cool for me to sort of pursue human rights policy and advocacy through a position with the U.S. State Department as a Foreign Service Officer. So it's kind of a long-term plan, it's ways down the road. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything else that I should share.
Can we see your portfolio?
Yeah, the mouse is kind of awful. But so my welcome page, my philosophy or my motivation, under what I did is a description kind of my work. And then I wrote about perhaps my 2 favorite meetings that I went to. Were in the Committee of Women, Children, and People with Disabilities, And one meeting was on the UN Conventions of the Rights of a Child, and the other one was on the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, and there were status updates from the respective departments on South Africa's progress, sort of in fulfilling the goals of those treaties, which they are not doing very well. So a lot of it they blamed on lack of funding, lack of interest, whatever you wish to say, they said probably. And then the second was a joint meeting between the Iraqi delegation, they were in South Africa for a study visit, and the same committee, talking about the work they're doing for these respective groups. They claim to be doing some great things. I disagree. But those were sort of my like aha moments of, they really are just sort of putting on a face and not necessarily implementing any sort of new changes, which was pretty interesting. I then have a reflection of, my time in South Africa and in my internship. And Say Cheese is a slideshow of photos from my trip in and around Cape Town, as well as the 2 trips that I took outside of Cape Town to Johannesburg and Kruger National Park, because you have to go on a safari if you go to Africa, and the Garden Route, which is a route along one of the highways that follows the southern coastline, and it's got mountains and pretty plants and hiking and stuff like that.
And I went to Dublin this past summer for about 5 weeks. I'm a junior currently in the College of Alison. I'm majoring in classical archaeology with currently 3 minors in anthropological archaeology, museum studies, and medieval and early modern studies. So I chose Ireland because I have had this very weird fascination with it ever since I was little. I just love like the culture and the history, and just like the people and like the idea of it really kind of attracted me to it. I worked for the National Folklore Collection of Ireland at University College Dublin. It is a very small staffed, small collection, but it is very rich in like what they collect and how long they've been doing it. They started around the 1930s and have been collecting ever since, and it's huge. They collect photos that they've taken currently and in the past, kind of accounts of people that they go interview about, customs of the region and, remedies and funerary practices and all that kind of good stuff. They also do sound recordings, so music, also people doing like verbal folk telling at, community gatherings, just kind of like real music, very, very Irish stuff. I think that's about all they collect, but I'm sure they, have more. So, yeah, I spent about 5 weeks, and I also did a lot of traveling. I think going just to my philosophy statement, travel is a huge part of my life. I really wanted to make it, part of what I do. I think it's, in order to get good experiences out of life, you should go and experience new places, new people, new things. And that's kind of like what my philosophy is. I did a lot of traveling within Ireland and also outside. I also went to Rome for about 5 weeks after that, but that's a different story. One of my favorite things that I did for the National Folklore Collection was a project that I was working on in which I listened to these folk songs that were recorded in the 1960s, and it was really cool just to kind of be immersed with these huge headphones, listening to these, very Irish, very sometimes old people singing different kinds of songs, like happy songs, sad songs. What I really kind of felt connected with was what was the Irish rebel songs, and it got me really interested in the Irish troubles and rebellion, and I didn't really understand what it was at the time, but because of listening to the music, I wanted to learn more. And so what I did was I talked to my boss a little bit, and I talked to other coworkers, and I even talked to my grandpa via email, and I did some Wikipedia research, so I did a lot of stuff. And I actually also was able to go on a bus tour trip up to Northern Ireland, where a lot of the Irish troubles happened. I don't know how many of you know about it, but it's pretty tumultuous up there. It was in the past, and still is a little bit now, but it's getting better. And anyway, my bus tour driver was telling us all these stories about all the bombings that happened, why kind of it happened. And what I kind of got out of his stories is that the Northern Ireland is actually a different country than the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland is part of the UK, and about 80 so years ago, the Republic of Ireland kind of separated. They won their independence. But Northern Ireland is mainly Protestant, and so they wished to remain part of the UK because the UK is also mainly Protestant. So they felt that their benefits and the interests of the government would be in their favor as kind of connection to religion. So it's kind of interesting how the separation of church and state hasn't really occurred there. But anyway, so what I learned about going up there was that being a predominantly Protestant region, Catholics who live up there and try to get jobs and work up there are highly prejudiced against. And in the past, there was a lot of controversy between the two. If you were Catholic and you were working up there, you would get death threats, and your family would be threatened, your house would be set on fire. My bus tour driver said that there was I don't know if this is true or not, but he said that he was in a cafe one time, and a guy just walked in, set down a suitcase, and then walked out, and the guy knew that it was a bomb, and so what he did was he took the suitcase and threw it in the street and it exploded. I still don't know if that's true, but if it is, it's very cool. He also told us, we went to Belfast, and he told us about this one hotel called the Europa Hotel that was bombed 28 times, and it's still running. If I were in Belfast, I don't think I'd want to stay there. I don't know. I don't really know why other people would either. But anyway, it was very inspirational and very moving to listen to the songs about these troubles through the songs and through the people. There was this one song called Foggy Dew, and I actually have a link to it here, but it's about basically the Easter Rebellion and how, because of the cruel deaths of these rebel leaders, this song incited the nation really to kind of rise up and finally rebel against the British. And after a certain amount of time, they did, I think was really powerful. And it got me thinking about how music, kind of can encourage people to act. I know that there are a lot of folk songs in America, especially around the time of the Revolution, like Yankee Doodle and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of just clicked with me that music is a very good way of communicating and getting things out without a publication, because a publication can be destroyed or whatever, but really if somebody memorizes a song, it can you can't erase it from their memory. So, and it travels probably just as quickly, if not more quickly, than paper. So in regards to my portfolio, this is kind of just the description of what I was doing. In regards to the internship, I didn't really do much other than menial intern stuff. I scanned photos into computers, organized the photos in the database and archives. I got to do a little bit of research for an American archaeologist who wanted to see if there was a custom that was linked to Ireland, because what it was children were being buried with these strange wires around their heads, and they thought that it was some kind of interesting Irish thing, because they thought it was an Irish Catholic cemetery that they were excavating. And what it was is what we determined is that the funerals in the Chicago area were just starting to capitalize on the business of death, I guess you can say. They would sell parents these wreaths of flowers that was made of wire to put on their child as they were buried. So it was kind of like taking advantage of their grief, but I guess not really. I mean, that must have been like the beginning of funerary businesses doing that. I also have a photo album back here, kind of showing all the different places that I went. I'm a photographer, so I really like taking photos. And yeah, these are just like a couple in Dublin. This is from my trip in Northern Ireland. My friends and I got to cross this really cool rickety rope bridge. Also in Northern Ireland, at the very tip, there's this place called Giant's Causeway. And it looks like this because it's really cool because it's like these huge steps that you get to climb on and climb over. And it's completely natural, not man-made at all. And it's huge and it's really, really like great to behold. This is kind of about Belfast. This is the Europa Hotel that was bombed so much. And then this was kind of what I imagined an attempt at healing between the two religions. It's a clotto, which is like a Irish symbol of love, friendship, stuff. So, and it looks like it was like, kind of a reconciliation between the two groups. And I thought that was really powerful that they would make like, public art on that. But it was also interesting because it was behind barbed wire. So, I don't know, maybe it's still in the works. Went to Cork, got to kiss the Barney Stone. That was pretty cool. There was this poison garden that was pretty funny just because there was all these poisonous plants in there. And I don't know, why would they do that? This is what I thought. It was pretty cool. I also got to go to the Cliffs of Moher, which was absolutely beautiful. We had a great day for it. And yeah, that's my friend Beth, kind of sitting on the edge. And I kind of wanted to make that my last one because, living on the edge is part of my philosophy. Just kind of go out and do things that you've never done before because when are you going to do it if not now? So yeah, thank you.
Your health intern. And just some background information on myself. I am an international studies major and I am a junior. So just an overview on my internship. I primarily worked in doing hygiene education at local schools in the city that I was living in. And the main topics that I covered were toothbrushing, hand washing, wound cleaning, and environmental health. And then I just kind of broke it down into some daily skills that I use every day, teaching children, planning lessons. It was really kind of a cultural understanding of how I could A, talk to children, and B, talk to children in a different culture. So it was breaking down not only the concepts, but in a basic English way that they understood. So that was my overall experience. And then just two specific things. One of the schools that I worked at was a special needs school. And there I was working with about 5 other volunteers, and we shifted instead of hygiene education for the students, our goal was to increase the health of the students by providing cleanliness and safety to their environment. They lived in dorms there, and a lot of them but the first day we walked in, they were just like covered in urine, like flies everywhere. The pavilion that they ate in, just swarms of flies. So we decided that our goal there was going to be to improve the health facilities and kind of teach the women that work there like how we could keep it more clean. So our daily tasks there included every day we would go in and scrub the floors of the dorms, clean the kitchen, and then they also had classrooms, so we would go in there and interact with the children a little more, try to teach them some basic conversation, some skills about washing hands, which we mostly did through song because a lot of them didn't really understand English, but they still knew some English songs, so that was kind of interesting. And then another experience that I had while I was there. This mouse isn't good either. So while I was there, this is actually from my blog. I just thought it would be interesting to have a view of a crisis while we were going through it. So there was kind of an ethnic clash between the tribal group and the Muslim group that were in the town that I was living in. One of the Muslim leaders had died and they wanted to bury him there, but the tribal group said, well, you can bury him, but you owe us like this amount of money. And they disagreed about that, and the Muslim community ended up burying the leader anyways. And so the tribal leader came back and dug up the body at night, and obviously that caused huge conflict. So the Muslim community came back, and some people like tried to burn down the tribal leader's house, which caused some more burning of. These were some Muslim shops that were right down the road from where I was staying. And then a lot of the Muslim community, because they came in later into this town, they left, and they were scared, obviously, from this destruction of what else was going to happen. So this was about a month into my experience there, and it was just so crazy to me how the dynamics of the city completely changed, and how there was this underlying conflict and kind of judgment between these two groups that I had not seen my first month there. So from this experience, I really came to understand the ethnic issues and how they're not easily forgotten, and how there is such a history behind them, and they can completely you can just turn on your neighbor. That's what I saw there. But I was there for a month after this happened, and I was able to see the town kind of come back, and some of the Muslim community came back, and I believe that it has definitely gone back to normal, but it was just really crazy to me to see the impact that had on this community. And then I just have one final page, my philosophy. My philosophy is kind of a reflection of how my philosophy and values changed from this experience. So I kind of broke down my values that I have in my life into three things: service, family, and faith. And that kind of guided me to want to go on this specific experience. And I kind of learned from this some specific things that I really found met these values in my life and are things that I want to pursue in the future. So from this, I kind of have decided that I would like to apply to be a Peace Corps volunteer, and specifically work in providing health services to people that don't have them. Thank
you. For those of you who walked in after.
My name is Andria Kadell. As Kelly mentioned, I'm a senior. I'm a sociology major and a community action and social change minor. Mabuhay, that's welcome in Filipino. It's the first phrase I heard when I got off the airplane and like walked out into this crazy, humid, hot atmosphere there. Really big change. It seems like my decision to do that was at the time kind of random. But one of the things I've learned through a lot of experiences this semester, it's been a very reflective semester as it is my last year as an undergrad, is that every experience really has something to allot you. You dig deep enough and you find out what it is. So just to sort of preface my experience there, I went to the Philippines to be a volunteer for this organization called Volunteer for the Science, which was actually like the local host organization there in the Philippines, but I was originally connected through World Endeavors, which sends volunteers and interns all over the world. I've got a couple links at the end I'll show you guys that you can check out if you want, if Kelly's going to have the links available somewhere. But I guess something that really stuck with me throughout the time that I was there was my interest in these jeepney drivers. And a jeepney is an old World War II traveling bus. You can see it here. There's a picture here. That the locals have taken over and have refurbished, refurnished, painted them up, made them look really cool, and they drive them around as the form of public transportation. The drivers are amazingly crazy, kind of. You're sitting in the back, and there are these open vehicles. You just hop on and hop off, and tap their change on this bar on the inside to let you know when they want to get off. But they're counting change. So as you're sitting there, you hand the person bills when you get on, and throughout the duration of your stay on the bus, the driver's expected to figure out how long you're going to be on the bus. You tell them where you're going, and he figures out how much you have to pay. If it's a longer distance, he gets more to say about how much you owe him. But what I found really interesting was that as a white female there in the Philippines, I really stuck out. And it's hard to get into a situation like that and not stick out, I guess. And so there was there was something about being different, just in the way that I looked, and the way that I couldn't speak Filipino, couldn't speak the language, that instantly alerted this driver that I was a foreigner, more specifically an Americana. Anybody white, anybody foreign is automatically assumed to be American there, which is an interesting assumption that a lot of the other volunteers that I wound up meeting while I was there found really problematic because they were from a lot of different countries. But so in being a sort of white female there, the drivers would often take my dollars and not give me change. And I asked a few different people about this because I was told that it was supposed to cost a certain amount to go a certain distance. And when I would give these big bills and they wouldn't give me change, I was conflicted because I'd never been there before. I'm from a small hometown. I felt really out of my element. It was the first time I'd been traveling internationally alone, and who was I to sort of question, the system there, how much the driver who is doing all these things at once and really knows his stuff, or seems to, is asking me for. So after being there for about a week and a half, my trip liaison, my friends, my homestay, we're all like, Andria, yeah, they're scamming you. So you should really be like asserting what you need. And that is just, in this case, ask them for your change. It's not that hard. Alayon, sukli, that's the phrase that you're supposed to ask. And roughly translated, it means, excuse me, like I think I need change. Like you've either forgotten to give me change, or in this duration of like me being on the bus, I haven't gotten my change, I need my change. So that phrase became one of many that has become really thematic for me, and in a more general sense, that idea of asserting what you need, not just as it refers to the amount of money that I would have needed on the bus, but for a lot of broader social, cultural injustices that maybe you're perpetuating when you don't stand up and say something. So that's sort of an overview of one of the cultural experiences there that's had a really big impact on me. My philosophy is very wordy, so I'm not about to read the whole thing to you, but the general idea is that, as I mentioned, I'm from a small hometown. I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. For those of you who are from Michigan, you'll know that that's a very small, isolated community. Desolate, as is represented by the picture on the right there. Beautiful, pure, but isolated. And it was a unique opportunity for me to have a father who always instilled the need to be open-minded. That's a huge theme in my childhood. Do new things, like go out and like have new experiences, meet new people, do things you wouldn't, normally consider doing, push yourself, basically. And so that idea sort of propelled me into searching for this volunteer position in the Philippines that I took up, which I originally thought, like I said, it's seemingly random. I had originally wanted to do a study abroad semester, but didn't have the time credit-wise. I figured next fall I'm coming back to do a master's in social work, so I didn't feel like I wanted to miss anything in Ann Arbor here, and it for a whole semester, so I figured that a summer trip might be more appropriate, and so I was looking for something relevant. My interest area is mainly in geriatric social work, so I want to work with aging and elderly citizens in the States, but that's a hard population to actually find volunteer positions or internships for. which, as Marijke was kind of talking about, it speaks to the the relevance or the importance that people put on that population. But moving beyond that, it wasn't an available opportunity. So I was trying to keep my mind open, as I had been told to do since I was a child, and just sort of let the chips fall as they may. And so I applied to this program, World Endeavors, who set me up with somebody through the Philippines who originally had to express an interest in at least a region of the world. And being from Michigan and having gone very few places internationally, I wanted to go somewhere really, really far away and see something really, really different. So the Philippines being, 12-hour time difference, being obviously different environments, seemed really appealing. I also had a Filipino professor who talked to me a lot about the region and about the people, and it seemed like just a really great place. So I committed to the Philippines, but not much else. And what I wound up with was a volunteer position as an activities coordinator at Regional Haven, which is a government-organized safe house for sexually abused and pregnant women and their children, which terrified me. Something really out of my element. I hadn't worked with that population before, but I was excited. It was something different. I had a chance to talk to a volunteer who'd been there before. She gave me a lot of good insight about the people who were there, the structure that I had to work within, and stuff like that. And so transitioning into my position there as a volunteer coordinator, it was a lot different than I was expecting, which I think is almost normal, if you can say normal, for an international experience to be different than you were expecting and for you to get different things maybe than you were expecting to get. But it really gave me the chance to gain a lot of skills and realize a lot of things about myself. Even if it had originally seemed kind of random, it was a really formative time for me. And so just in a day-to-day sense, I'd go to this center, which was like 15 minutes. It was like a 15-minute jeepney ride away from where I was living in a homestay in Tacloban City on Leyte, which is, by the way, one of like 7,000 or more islands in the Philippines. And I get there and we do like an intro activity, icebreakers, get to know each other, name games, stuff like that. We would transition into one or two concrete activities for the day. So we would do art activities, we do jewelry making, tie-dyeing, we baked one of my family's coffee cake recipes. We did some collaboration with some of the other volunteers that were there. While I was there, we did yoga, we did drawing, we did volleyball, we did a bunch of different stuff. But I would end every day with a journal reflection for them. One of my purposes in being there was really to be a source of empowerment for them, and to make them realize that though they were being isolated in this sort of community away from everyone else, they were still capable, they were still valuable members of society, and they could do a lot of things for society and for themselves. So in being there, it made me realize just how flexible you actually have to be in an international setting and in a leadership position as well. Because I don't know, for me anyway, it seems like you're always in a role, and there's someone, interacting with you in that role. Either, for me in this role, it was me as the volunteer coordinator and having to work with the staff there, having to work with the women there. So it gave me the chance, not only was the Filipino culture to sort of be lax about time. Filipino time is no time. You show up whenever you want to anything. So that was kind of hard to get used to. Had the buffer of Michigan time, I guess, if you will. But other than that, it was kind of a tricky thing to get used to. But beyond just the time of flexibility, there was this large structural component of like their government and social services system that was really difficult for me to try and cope with. The organization itself is all government run. The women don't pay to be there, but once they assert, they make an assertion and a claim against someone else, a husband, a boyfriend, a family member, a father, in terms of sexual abuse or sexual assault, they agree to go to this sort of isolated community, basically, and they're not allowed to leave the confines of this government complex until their court case has been finished. The staff there told me it was a matter of keeping them safe, and I guess they figured they didn't want these women leaving because these women had brought a case against someone who had abused them, and they were afraid that there might be some violent interactions or something if they went back to the communities where they were living. So, case in point, the women weren't allowed to leave. They're not allowed to go out and buy food. They're not allowed to go see their families. Every time somebody comes to see them, it's noted in like a log book. So it's a very structured life for them, and because they don't pay to be there or to use the services there, they function as not only the clients but as the staff themselves. So they're cleaning up, they're cooking for all the other staff, and so overall, I just had like an issue kind of coping with the structure that they were put in as it related to the fact that this was supposed to exist for them as opposed to for the staff. It seemed kind of backwards to me, but it gave me a chance to really work with structure and to note how to work within the structure. So I have another experience, but I know we're running short on time, so I'll just put this last final quote up for you. It's long and lengthy, and I think it really represents me because, as you've probably noticed, I like to go on and on and on, and it's I have a hard time really controlling all the things that I want to say. So I'll just read this and be done, and there's pictures floating, so you can come back and ask questions if you want. I firmly believe that if you follow a path that interests you, not to the exclusion of love, sensitivity, and cooperation with others, but with the strength of conviction that you can move others by your own efforts, and do not make success or failure the criteria by which you live, the chances are you'll be a person worthy of your own respects. So, thank you.
We lived in homestays, and we lived in Managua, which is the capital, but we worked in Barrio Camino Ortega, which is like 20 minutes outside of Managua, and it was really different than like the city atmosphere that we lived in, and even just driving like 20 minutes, people were living in like basically shacks, and like it was just a rural difference compared to the city. And I guess one of the main things that I got out of this experience was that I left like thinking, oh, I'm gonna go help this community in Nicaragua, like use my skills and like teach them things and like just help out, but like I think I learned a lot more than I actually was able to give to them. So I went with a program called Race, which is an NGO, or nonprofit organization, and they send a group of students from U of M every May, but they also have other volunteers that go there throughout the year. Anyone who really wants to can sign up with them. They have orientation and stuff. So the things that we did there, we taught English in the school because we worked at a school, and then across the street there was a health clinic. So in the school we taught English, and then in the afternoon we held a kids club for all the kids in the neighborhood. And then in the health clinic we had like fundraise money for them to put this on, which they do every May. And there's 2 different doctors, one that comes in the morning, one that comes in the afternoon. And they would see, it was basically first come, first serve. The first 20 people that got there in the morning would get to see the doctor, and again in the afternoon. So we worked in the pharmacy, like distributing medicine to the people after they had gone to see the doctor, and we also worked at the front desk, like filing folders and just taking their like height and their weight and their blood pressure before they went to see the doctor. So that was basic overview of what we did. And then I just want to talk about like two experiences that I had that were really like aha moments to me. So one of my favorite things to do was work in the pharmacy with the nurse Jessie. She was part of Race, but she also had another job at the hospital, and she would work like 12-hour shifts at the hospital the night before, from like 7 to 7, and then she would come in and work from like 8 to 3 in the clinic with us, and she was so funny, and she would always be happy, and like we would be like complaining how hot it was and how tired we were, and she was just like so energetic, and she would help us with our Spanish, and whenever we were done like doing the medicine counting and like all the patients we're seeing, we would just like kind of sit there and talk to her. And one day I was sitting there talking to her, and she was telling me about Nicaragua and like her life and all this stuff, and she said, here in Nicaragua, we believe friendships are more important than money, and that's because if you have friends and you need something, they'll always be able to help you, but if you have money, like these relationships are just so much more important. And that was kind of like a moment where I was like, it all, like I'm sitting here in this clinic, and this amazing woman is like teaching me lessons when I thought I was going to be going and helping someone. And we had really talked about as a group before we left like the importance of establishing relationships with the people we met there, and this kind of like solidified that, and it really made me like realize how it was important to like work together with these people and not just like go in and like it wasn't just about helping them, it was about like learning about their lives and what they do, and like working together with them. So that was like really important to me. And then another experience I talked about was also in health clinic again. Towards the end of our trip, another set of volunteers came in. They were nurses, and they were there doing like working with the kids in the school, and they were giving them all checkups. So it was like our last week in the clinic, and we do the height and the weight stuff. So they had corrected us on what we were doing with the height. They were like, because we would take the tape measure against the wall and be like, okay, this is your height, and they like came up and drew a line on the wall, and they're like, why don't you just do it like this? Like, why wouldn't you do that? And we were like, oh, I don't know, like, it's just how we were doing it. And so that just really showed me like the importance of building a relationship with who you're working with, and really like the way to be like effective with your volunteering, because as Americans, I think we often go in and like think that, oh, we're just gonna help these people because we know what's best and stuff. But really, like, you have to work together to like get to know them and see like what they want and stuff before you can just like tell them what to do. So yeah, and then I have a link to my blog, and then some pictures. So yeah.
Programs, and they're a U.S. program that connected me with a local human rights NGO. First, a little bit about me. I'm a senior here, and I am studying sociology with minors in Spanish and community action and social change. And I am currently a social justice intern at my church. And my time in Cusco was very influential for me. It was very, very powerful. I not only learned and improved greatly on my Spanish because I was living and working with people who didn't know any English, so I always had to be practicing my Spanish. And it was also just a really great time to learn more about intercultural connection and interaction and how to work in diverse teams. I had practice with event planning and organizing through my internship, and a really great exposure to a new type of social justice for me. And I built really great lasting relationships. Last night I was Facebooking with friends from Peru and getting a little homesick. So maintaining those connections is really important for me as well. A little bit about the organization I worked with. It's called Abrevida, which in English is the Association for Life and Human Dignity. And basically it works to, it's based in the region of Cusco, and it works to champion democracy and justice in the region because they're still recovering from their violent periods in the 80s and 90s. Working to defend the rights of the people and make sure that all voices are heard. And one of the experiences I had with this, I was very fortunate in that I was able to really take an active role as an intern. I didn't find myself doing too many of those trivial tasks, but one of the really cool things we got to do was participate in this Plan Nacional de Derechos Humanos, which is the National Plan for Human Rights. And this is after the violent period. The government of Cusco decided that they needed some sort of plan to make sure that such violence and corruption couldn't happen again. So they came up with this plan, and it didn't work the first time, so they were in phase 2 of it. And it was basically each region of Peru came together and had this conference where members of the community, political leaders, organization leaders could all come together and dialogue about the different issues that the country faces and that they face in their individual communities. And through that, we worked to create a plan, a very feasible plan that they could take then to the government, and the government could make sure to implement. So we were lucky in that in my time there, in my 3 months there, the regional conference for Cusco happened to coincide with our time, and so I was able to participate in the regional event, and that meant that I got to be right there in these dialogues with all sorts of amazing people through the community, and it was a bilingual discussion in Spanish and Quechua, and it was just very interesting to see how the different members of the community were able to dialogue through these difficult issues, and in some ways that didn't work, in some ways that did work, and this was especially impactful for me because I'm interested in social justice in terms of how to make systemic changes and how to make systemic, get to the roots of these problems, and that was a very powerful way that we can do that in Peru. And second, I am an IGR facilitator, going to be an IGR facilitator next semester, so this was a really cool experience for me to see dialogue in practice and things that work and things that don't work in a real world setting. And I won't get too much into this, but this was another experience I had in the office in which I looked at the Spanish laws that pertain to indigenous communities. Laws in Peru are only written in Spanish, and a lot of the indigenous communities only speak Quechua. So my office members wanted me to read these laws as someone who doesn't speak Spanish as her first language, and try to come up with creative ways that others who don't speak Spanish as their first language might better understand the laws. So it took a lot of self-determination, a lot of problem solving and kind of creative thinking, but it was a very powerful experience, and they say that they're going to use my drawings to put a packet together, which I don't know about that because I'm not an artist. And then this is another experience that I had on the side when I went to Machu Picchu. When my friend and I were in the city at the base of Machu Picchu, we kind of wandered off the hidden path or the beaten path, and came upon a really amazing community. And we were just passing through the streets, and they invited us in to join in their song and dance. It was a feast day of a saint there, and they just showed us incredible, incredible love. And my friend, I was just talking to my friend the other day, she lives in Minnesota. She was like, yeah, I was just using that in a presentation as an example. And I was like, that's funny, I'm going to use that in a presentation tomorrow. So, very cool. It definitely impacted both of us. So this is one of my blog posts from the summer, excuse me. And I have a link to the rest of my blog. And then this is a photo gallery of just all sorts of different experiences. I had too many pictures to choose from for my whole site, so I put them all up there. So big takeaways, things that are still impacting me today. They range from, I listen to my Spanish music all the time now. My roommates get a little annoyed with it. But I also, the way I approached my senior year is totally different. It definitely had more of a focus on the relationships and taking advantage of every moment, and really focusing on being rather than doing and filling the schedule with busy things. Also, I have continued the social justice work in my social justice internship this year, and that has been awesome. It's given me such a different perspective on how to approach justice and peace work. I've continued, through my internship, have continued working with the Hispanic and Latino community, and that's been a really powerful experience, and keeping up with Spanish has been great. And I, like a couple of the other girls have mentioned, I am applying for programs abroad next year for similar to the Peace Corps, a little bit different, but hopefully continuing my international experiences. And whatever I end up doing, it will strongly be influenced by my experience in Cusco and my values that I learned there, which comes back to my philosophy statement. My philosophy statement largely has to do with connection and human connection. I learned that it's really important to be in kinship with one another, and social justice is not necessarily all about the doing and the saving, but a lot about the walking with and being with. So that was a very powerful thing that I learned and that I'm taking with me. And yeah, overall, it was just an amazing, amazing experience. So thank you.